All right, so 70% of your learning happens in the class. So making sure that you create these opportunities for your employees to attend training courses, and it doesn't need to be or cost a lot or need to be a degree, degrees, that kind of thing. Can be as easy as a quick online course. But creating those opportunities for people to practice those skills that they've learned and apply them in day-to-day scenarios. Now, there is a little bit of an example there. So if you spend 1 hour on the LinkedIn Learning training course, spend about 2 hours sharing that knowledge with a friend and sharing ideas and how you can transfer that skill, and then applying it at least 7 hours. Make sure that you explore that new skill that you've learned. Hey, 10,000 steps. One.
No, sorry, I moved the mouse to just come from there.
Really, I'm ready to find her sitting outside. She's still on the call. Right, this is it. Yeah. So what we'll do is when she comes in, she's missed half of it. She can watch the recording. We give her your watch and she can make up for it. She'll be fine with another turn.
I mean, really wellness and women's wellness. All right. So how do we do it? Does anyone of you watch the Mandalorian? The Nintex way? Anyway, so we are quite privileged at Nintex. We are a global team, but we have got a dedicated learning and development center of excellence. They are based in Seattle, but they do service the entire globe. And what is nice about having a team like that is dedicated, HR leads can be HR leads, and we've got this expertise, knowledge coming in to guide us with programs that we can roll out for our employees. Now, this learning development center of excellence also ensures that our L&D strategy is aligned to our company strategy and obtains quite a lot of feedback from employee surveys, manager feedbacks. We actually have a survey meeting, we won't need it. I don't know if you guys use Office-Wide, but once a week. And we're constantly looking at personal growth. And you can break it down per, department, per region, and you can easily see where there's a gap where people are behind on personal growth. And then we can start aligning our strategies to look at that. So that firstly is our foundation, is having that center of excellence to actually look after our learning and development. Awareness, and that starts day one. So our employees through orientation are informed about all the tools that is available to them, all the platforms that they can use, and that it's their responsibility to take ownership of their career. What is very important as well is that our employees are successfully integrated into their new role. And that is a requirement for each and every one of our managers to create a 3-month onboarding plan for our employees, taking them through those milestones, whether that's through training at our Nintex Learning Academy, whether that's Microsoft training, or on-the-job training with employees, knowledge sharing, and projects that they need to complete. As I mentioned, ownership, we can pay for training courses, we can bring you to the water, but if you don't actually want to train, there's nothing. So we educate our employees. We provide everything for them on our intranet. There are educational videos on creating your IEP, and you need to take responsibility on that. How to look at your position description and creating looking for that next role, or what's my shortfalls in my current role. So all of that is given to our employees to empower them to take ownership of their learning and development path. Managers are, of course, they're educated as well to guide our employees through the process and provide counseling if that is, but it's not their responsibility to set down those steps and tasks for our employees. And then tools and platforms, various. I mentioned our Nintex Learning Academy. There's actual product training on there for our employees, for our go-to-market team. There's sales training, how to sell our products. We've got mentorship for our employees, coaching availabilities, manager development programs. So quite a lot that our employees can choose from. One of my favorite is LinkedIn Learning. I don't know any HR people in this room, but you can really go and visualize who, you know, HR has changed so much since COVID, and they've got up-to-date training courses and learning paths on HR and legal marketing at the moment. In terms of platforms, and then manager education and feedback side. Like I mentioned before, our managers are coached and guided to have one-on-one discussions with our employees, quite simply check with them where they are on the understanding, what kind of action they take. Is there any hurdles that needs to be reviewed? It is a requirement that they also complete with employees quarterly goal setting and checking. We should have an element of personal development there as well. And then providing feedback to our annual check-ins and feedback cycles, or requesting feedback from your peers. So this is how we maintain it after we have created that culture of learning and development. And now I'm going to break some more. So we've got a very good graduate program in South Africa. We currently only take 5 grads a year. I don't need more than that. But yeah, we take 5 grads a year. It's a 12-month structured program that they have to go through. Now, normally when you've got school leavers, they finish school, or let's say university, everyone comes with a computer science degree and I want to be a software engineer. Once they get into that role, not really what they expected to do, and you know, real life is something they expected it to be. So what we do is we normally have a rotational program. In that 12 months, they will cycle through all the disciplines of engineering. So whether that's DevOps, whether that's your technical writing, which we've got technical writers in South Africa as well, your quality testers and that kind of thing. And at the end of the program, they rate themselves and the managers rate them. And they can clearly see where they have done well and where their skills lie. So that's really quite a good way for us to be permanent work afterwards. And may I say, we have been very successful very successful in the last 6 years, 100% success rate of placing these grads into permanent roles once they've successfully completed this program. First one, of course, coming to Nintex, because we put in all the money and the effort, but we can't be reliant with our partners and customers to make sure that our employees or candidates do find homes. I can see opportunity here for placement fees, but anyways, overall for a company, benefits. So fresh talent pool, getting in new fresh talents from universities, those kids can't find jobs, you can shape them, make them, and provide them with the necessary skills so that they can move into the job market successfully. Skills transferred. We've got a very unique situation at Nintex. Top heavy with senior engineers. We're doing something right, people don't leave. But you know, we need some fresh talent in there as well. And this program is perfect to get new fresh talent into the organization. Of course, it assists with your resource planning and then funding. We get some money back from government as well. So if you need any advice like to get the money back from the MICT sector, let you know we lies within quite a few. And I think that is it.
Awesome, man. Thank you. Don't run away until there's some questions. I'm going to start. So if you don't mind jumping back to your 5-layer, the one before this, yeah. For me, I think, you know, HR professionals, learning and development is a huge passion of ours. But a lot of this happens organically in the right environment, but that environment can only start when the decision comes from the top. How did you get the buy-in from the top so that learning and development was part of Nintex's strategy?
I don't have to do much because our managers do see the benefit of that. You know, with working in a software engineer company in emerging markets and that kind of thing, it is my priority for our employees to have the relevant skills that is required in the market for the new products that we are developing. And it is part of our strategy to make sure that we've got the right people in the right roles at the right time. So not a lot of work needed to be done from my side on this, because there's really buy-in from managers. We make sure through education, we build that down to our managers and the tool that's dealing with our employees.
And how are they held accountable for that?
Accountability, having the right people in the right roles at the right time. And so yes, we don't have any skill shortages. If those shortages do come up, we normally plan for them in advance through our Learning and Development Centre of Excellence.
Awesome, that's fantastic. Any questions? Sue, sorry, you may moderator for the online questions. If you don't know, yes, there was a hand here. Where did the hand come? Oh, there we go. Yeah.
You mentioned once you have these resources and you need to find homes for them, what type of clients do you work with? I'm going to get the names. Are they insurance, telecoms, mining, what, or
They're
whatever?
the same business as us, but they provide that service as well as a consultancy base for various other organizations that use our products.
Okay. Okay, awesome. Yes, you. That's why you always have marketing here. Any questions? Any comments or questions about implementing and driving this learning culture in an organization? Lish, start there.
You mentioned, you can't force somebody to learn. So how do you encourage people to learn this? Maybe are a little bit resistant.
You know,
You start with a big thing.
I tried to not see there. You probably did not.
no. We really regularly go through career discussions with our employees, finding out where they want to go, what are their aspirations. We try to align those needs with the needs of the company. You do have always that those people that aren't happy at what they do. It's the worker bees. They're okay. They put their head up. They're happy to be doing what they are doing. And there is a place for them in our organisation. Where there is needed skills, we will try as a group actually to roll out new skills, and it's almost like friendly competition, between the guys to make sure that they are under the same level. We haven't really seen people drop out and not having or wanting to have the right skills to support our business. So far it's been an easy journey.
Awesome. Gaylin.
I may have missed it at the beginning and then when I took a line.
Understandable.
And we do refer to that metrics in terms of success. And I was wondering what you measure and when. I mean, not in too much detail, but how do you measure what the different steps in the detail that you want to do.
The last of the Learning and Development Centre of Excellence, and not with me.
So in terms, I mean, just to those metrics, you've obviously got HR KPIs, which have any metrics, but thank you to my phone, sorry about that, Vodafone. Where else do
Because I don't have the right skills in that team, they would be measured on that as well, but I don't have the correct skills.
Awesome. Any other questions? Comparisons, the rest.
On the graduate program, with the interns, do you have certain people that mentor the graduates and how do you get, I mean, everybody's always so busy. How do you get them to actually take the time to spend with the graduates?
That's a little secret. HR pays for them. Connected against TV sources. So literally that is what happened this year. We in the past had a graduate program lead that managed and coordinated this whole program. But that role was eliminated, unfortunately. And what we did this year, we went to our engineering team and managers and said, listen, we can coordinate this for you. What our managers did is they took ownership of that. And with the team, our engineering teams are about 8 strong. There would be a dedicated person to look after them, but they would rotate within the team for skills strong.
Awesome. Meranid, thank you so much. Very nice to see how someone wants to do it. So before we go on to our next speaker, I'm going to put you all on the spot and ask you if you're up to date with your own career development plan. So I think that's where we often, and nobody, I see no hands came up for the online. I'm not sure if you heard me, but I just asked everyone if they're up to date with their own career development plan. Some of you I know, some of my colleagues are there. You can put your hand up. But I think that's one of the big things when we talk about a learning and development culture is, are we doing it? And what works for us, because typically when you make effective decisions, thanks for being honest, Mars. But typically, it starts with me. So if we want to drive the learning and development culture and organization, what are my peers saying? And what is my team saying? And when we phrase it like that, it changes the lens a bit, because Meranid, in the beginning of your slide, her job title was the HR manager. We know everybody comes to us, my training, blah, blah, blah. And it would be very easy to go, okay, you need to do A, and when you've done A, come back to me, and then I'll tell you the next step. But that defeats the point. So here's my challenge. I wouldn't let you enjoy your evening for a public holiday without a personal challenge. It's to just recalibrate your personal development, your career development plan. We're in August, if you can believe it. I sent a meme the other day. So in fact, it was last Monday, so it means that yesterday was the 19 Mondays until Christmas. That's pretty much what everybody said. But I mean, more importantly, it's 19 Mondays then, because that one's not done, until 2024. So all those plans that you make for your own development, what were you going to commit to? What were you going to work towards? The requirements, the mandatory stuff, the things you have to do, but also the things you want to do. You want to learn French. Why are you putting it off? Why isn't it important? So I think the big takeaway here is companies can have all the structure in the world and all the tools and platforms, and it was one of the things that Meranid did say, somebody's buying drinks. One of the things here right in the middle there was ownership. And I think if we, as in learning and skills development and getting young people into the industry, is to start with that mindset that organizations can provide incredible opportunities, but if you don't have the mindset to drive it yourself, it's going to be nothing. And I think that messaging is how you drive that success. So Meranid, great. Thank you very much for sharing all of this. And I did double up on your slides so that at least the recording will have them. I'm sorry about that. And in case those of you wanted to know, I'll just jump back to this slide over here, because that's Meranid who's just spoken, and that's an important slide to see. So thank you very much. Awesome. I'm going to switch to a new deck now. And just allow those of you sitting here quickly to refresh your drinks, get something more to drink, and then come back while I switch the slides. Those of you on the call, can dash to top up your wine glasses, and I'm going to bring up Deirdre's deck now. Sue.
Raise bar check, you know, to that's right, because you give us
Are you driving yourself? Okay, I'll leave it and I'll leave it over there. So you.
Okay, perfect. I'm also gonna just time. Just seems bad. Okay, so we get going to Deirdre. So this is another WIT member that was a year ago. It was, yeah, a year ago, yes. Okay. So this is the power of networking. I'm not getting that. Very old school. I play solitaire still on my phone. My son's 5, and this weekend he was introduced to virtual gaming or PlayStation, and there's a Toy Story even, which I think is half the appeal. But now it's very much. And I'm like, oh, that's something you do with your dad. But if you want to be alternative puzzle, I'm that person. Anyway, I met Deirdre, and her whole focus is around using gamification in organizations. And of course, working in IT, I've heard of this, it sounds intriguing, but I mean, how do you do this really? Really? You know, you don't want, I don't need to give my developers any more reason to go, an excuse to go and spend the evening gaming. Okay. And when we came up with this topic, well, we were led to this topic just through the feedback from previous events and where organizations are really focusing on time. It knits together so nicely, because the big question from people and organizations is, I know what to do, I know why we need to do it, but I don't know how to do it. But how do I get people to want to learn? And in fact, in a roundabout way, 2 people asked that after Meranid spoke. Like, how do we get people to want to do this? They have to do it, but we don't want them to be doing it with long teeth. We want them to be like, oh, this is so exciting, I can't wait to do this. Ta-da! That's very good. Excellent. Awesome. Off you go. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for your time, and thanks everyone for giving me your time and your attention, because you all know it's a very valuable resource. So I don't have lovely pictures, I forgot about that part. So I'm Deirdre Jansen, my company is called Game to Change. Just to give you a little bit of a story around how I got into this, is I started with an education, an NGO, and then I went into corporate learning consulting. And I was in various stints, and I was sitting and I was working on training people on banking products, which is incredibly boring. And I'd be the person standing in the front and everyone's eyes would be like that. And at the time, I came across a TED talk by Jane McDonough around, she was a game designer. And she had said that it's amazing how people playing games are so motivated. They bring their best selves into that game. And she then started to do research with the Institute of Future Studies. And she realized that the whole game mechanics, there's something to it. There's something that engages us, and we actually hardwired to play games. And if we could take that kind of attention and motivation and use it to solve everyday problems, use it in learning, how much more powerful would that be than just in entertainment? So this TED talk blew up the internet. I think it's millions of views. Please go and look at it. It's very inspiring. And this really was like my trigger point. And I did an online course, gamification, because I was really feeling quite jaded by everything. And I did the course. I knew the theory around it. And then I was lucky enough, I got a client, and I took the step out and decided I'm going to start Game to Change. And I got a client who was brave enough to sponsor me in designing and Gaylin to teach their particular core banking system. And that was how I started. And it's been quite a journey. It's been a very gratifying journey, a very challenging journey. But for me, I personally, what this brings with human psychology, technology, and learning is I see so much potential, and that's what's kept me going through times where I really had to educate people on this concept. And it's been, we started with, I'm also, I like Monopoly. I have other people who are very tech savvy, they play online games. So we started with board games. And my personal passion is when I bring people together, they play a game, and they learn and they connect. And you just see something happening, and that still makes my hair stand up on my arms. But obviously, there's also this amazing technology that's coming out. So today, I really wanted to share with you just some of the ideas around it, and that it's not that difficult to integrate. You don't need to have millions and developers behind you. So I'm going to just share with you why I believe, because we've got so much on our plate. And one of the things that is, why should we invest in, sorry, just if you don't mind, stand there, because when you're standing in the middle, the projector's on your face. Oh, okay. You can't see your face. Okay, great. So why should we invest in learning? What's the importance of it? Why don't we just give our content and say to people, go and learn this? And I think learning is becoming that superpower. It's the superpower to make organizations more competitive. It's a superpower to make organizations feature fit, and it keeps us relevant. And that whole Alvin Toffler quote that says the biggest gift of the 21st century is the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And this is where, I think this is where we've got to put the investment, the time, and the thinking is, how do you make learning better? And how do you make learning easier to consume and tie into people's motivation around it? So I think these are two that talks around my whole purpose is, it's not about giving people a whole lot of content. It's about igniting that catalyst and that curiosity to learn. And this is where gamification can really help with that. And it's also about triggering people to expand their minds and to look forward into the future and not just learning. And that's why about taking in content, but thinking, what else can I do with this? So I came across some really interesting stats around the importance of learning and the importance of it in terms of organizations and taking organizations into the future.
And one of them was the 2021 Global Human Capital Report, and they said 92% of organizations with a strong learning culture are more likely to innovate. So there's a strong correlation between learning and innovation and new ideas. The other thing is that they said 18% of companies who have well-designed and delivered learning programs are more likely to retain and attract talent. So we can see that learning is becoming a currency. And then 94% of employees will stay in an organization if it caters to their learning and development needs. And I think that talks about the currency of learning and mobility in this world. Because if you're not learning, you're not staying up to date. So I thought that's really interesting, and it ties back to why we need to put this focus on learning. So what does the workforce need? What are some of the things that we know? The first thing, digital interactivity. This is a really interesting concept for me personally, because I came out of a textbook era. But the workforce and people coming into the workforce and who've even been in the workforce for a degree of time have actually engaged with the digital world. They're used to having interactivity and engagement. They're not used to having passive content. So they actually call it, there's a language of digital interactivity, and learning has to be designed in that way. People want it to be relevant and applicable to what they're doing, to their jobs, makes sense. They want it to be experience driven. So what is the difference between just putting content and having experience? Is an experience taps into your motivation, it taps into not just your thinking mind, into your heart as well. And that creates that stickiness of learning. People want to see progression, and they also want it to be personalized. So I think those are very, across the board, that is acknowledged as what people wanted in their learning. So what are the ways in which we address those needs or making people want to learn? So we know we need tailored learning coaches, and we see more and more of that with AI, with technology, with learning platforms. We've seen that technology can enable content in a much more consumable way. I mean, we see it with mobile devices. You don't need to sit in front of a laptop. You don't need to be on a computer. You can actually use your mobile device, and you can get it in bite-sized chunks, which is number 5. People want it to be social and collaborative. And this is very interesting because technology actually allows us in a lot of the cases. And obviously gamified and interactive. So the key thing is the workforce has come out of playing games. We know the video game, the online game is massive. So that is the environment they understand. So if you talk to them in that language, they're so much more receptive to learning in that way. And the other thing, and it's a bit of a controversial one, and it says learning has to be micro and bite-sized. So I believe that for a lot of things you can do it. I think there's some deeper skills where you still need that structured program, you still need that structured learning. The micro and bite-sized really around that on-the-job learning and creating it in that format. So we know that we need to bring these approaches into our learning to make them palatable, to make people motivated to learn. And that is where, in my long-winded way, I shall lead to gamification. And this is where gamification can meet a lot of these needs. So it really allows us to tap into those motivation factors. We know that, and I'll bring up down the line just a little bit of the different types of game mechanics and how it ties up into our core motivators. We know that currently a lot of brands gamify their customer engagement on social media. So people are really in that flow of things, and what they're experiencing in entertainment and on consumables, they also want to experience learning. So we know that we need to bring that into our learning design. We know that, as I said before, there's this huge influence of online games. And our online games are there's a whole subculture around online games. And that is how people interact and they play. And that has a big influence on how learning is received. And the other thing is technology is making this gamification far more accessible to not just big organizations with big tech budgets, but to even the small organizations. We can see how technology is ramping up. I mean, now with AI, you can quite easily design sophisticated simulation just using a couple of prompts from that. So these are all the things that are pushing gamification into the mainstream of learning. This is a really interesting report that I pulled up. It was done in 2019. It says that these are just the projected 5-year growth of game-based learning systems. And for me, it's really interesting. And you can see that Africa is actually one of the highest sitting there. And I've thought quite a bit about it, and there's a lot of in this report, but part of it is Africa has a very, it's got a younger demographic in the workforce. And if you're looking at how games are leapfrogging now with some of the technology advances, those systems are going to be far more feasible. So very interesting to see this, and I think very relevant to the South African environment as well. So, has anyone experienced games gamification in their workplace? Yes, no, once. Like to share your experience. Good word.
You have to get badges and points and it's really bad at it.
Okay.
I like a pick that.
So you think that the badges and points, anyone else?
I'm just going back to learning German environment, and they've got their gamification box. Yeah, German. It's like, okay, let me just do the next lesson.
Yeah.
You know, and then you get more little badges and more little points and all that.
Exactly.
It's great.
It ties into hardwiring. So I'm going to speak about that now. Great. So we've all had, and we've probably had it in our consumer experience. There's quite a bit of gamification in the online. I mean, that's built into UX design. In learning, and I mean, I found this very useful, is gamification can be used in various ways. So there is content gamification and structure. This is where you have a learning pathway where you have points, leaderboards, badges. So the actual journey is gamified. We also have in actual content where it's not a particular game, you have stories and you have scenarios, and I'm going to share some of those. So has anyone ever done any online learning where there's been a story or the scenario and you get feedback on that? That is a form of gamification and taking the elements into it. So we have that sitting on the left side where you actually gamify your content. Then you have on the right side, we've got serious games, and that's where you're actually using a game, getting in an end to teach a particular skill, behavior, or to bring a message home. And that is, it's got an endpoint. A lot of this is used, you'll see in MBAs where you have actual simulations that you run, and that's set up in a game-based format. And you compete against other teams and you get points around it. So that's just a simple example of that. So those are the two areas that we very much play in. Then you have gamification where you bring in, there's no gameplay on the one side and you're just having fun. And that could be hacks, that could be dice, it could be anything that you bring into a workshop. It could also be in an online environment where you get certain points or you get rewarded. We know that in Mentimeter and some of the online tools, there's gamification in that. So it's not a particular game, but we use elements on it, and it's more fun than having a purpose. And then we have icebreakers, which is an actual game, and those are short, sharp games that are used. It's more a fun element. It's more to get people engaged. So that's a really good way of understanding how different aspects of gamification fit into learning. Does that give it some kind of context? Okay, great. Anyone online have anything to say? So when we design and when we put it into a learning program, and this is Maslow's hierarchy, we often have a lot of talk about the extrinsic, the trivial there, which is just as important, around points, badges, prizes, and leaderboard. And those are things, and that's what you experience where you've got points, badges, but it's very superficial. And it still can be used, and we see it with on social media with your likes, that's using certain elements around it. You can see it when you've got a leaderboard, but it's got a very short shelf life if you're not tapping into your more intrinsic motivations. So this is where it becomes more powerful, more effective. So when you're looking at your intrinsic motivation, it's around relatedness. So when I'm connecting with someone in a game or in a platform, that creates a sense of motivation. When I'm looking at going in and sharing or doing an escape room, as an example, and I need to solve a problem or a challenge, that is around both exploration, so I have a sense of agency, and also around mastery, where I'm improving myself and I'm getting a feedback loop to say, how am I doing in that? And you'll see that in certain game-based learning, you actually have progression levels, and you can see how you're going through those progression levels. So Duolingo, as an example, you will have some extrinsic, where you've got a streak, but then you will get the satisfaction of saying, this is how much you've mastered. So that's where they bring in both the deeper motivation elements with the more extrinsic layer. So when you're designing, you want to put those two elements together, because then your actual learning will have more of a long-term and impactful effect. So that's really around when we look at putting our games and our programs together, we look at how we build those in. So anyone have any questions around this? And I know I'm sharing a lot of, I'm sharing quite a bit of content, but it does give you just a bit of a base for this. So don't be frightened by this. There's a lot of. So as I said before, those intrinsic layers, we've broken it down into 4 areas. And when we design a game or we bring in elements of gamification, what we want to do is we want to tap. Most people have a combination of those 4 areas. So that taps into purpose. So you'll see one of the in the intrinsic layer, the philanthropist is motivated by purpose. So as an example, Wikipedia. Everyone knows how Wikipedia is grown. Why do you think people contribute to something like time? Want to be part of that. They're driven by purpose. They're contributing to something bigger. They're knowledge sharing in that process. And this is a very strong driver. And you also find that there's games change, which is an organization, and the UN, where they actually use games and people contribute to solving problems through the actual game. So it's actually it's a core need that we tap into with certain games. And then we use sharing knowledge, gifting and sharing. I don't know if anyone's on the Discovery Vitality. If you do a certain amount of points, you can actually donate. There's certain organizations that you can donate to. So that makes you feel good at the end of the day. So that's where we're looking at purpose. Then we've got the socializer. So that is really about relatedness. So we are social creatures. And when we are in a social forum, we get a certain dopamine hit when we are sharing, and you can see it in social media, when you can see how you're going on a leaderboard, or where you are in a bigger group, where you are, where you've got competition. There's a social aspect to that. So like, I want to get better than my colleague. You might not say it up front. So that's where the socializer comes into the game mechanics around it. And you see it a lot with if you've played a game of 30 seconds, there's that social aspect that comes into it. And then the last 2 is the free spirit. And this is like your drive to have agency. And this is where you really have the need for autonomy. So you want to discover these things, you want to use your own agency, you want to have a degree of freedom in that. And this is where you'll see with escape rooms, or where you have to look for certain things. So we do certain, you'll see some of the games where you actually have to go and search for things and unlock things, and that whole experience of discovery brings a sense of satisfaction. And you can see here, this is very much around creativity. So even with some of the social media platforms where they use you to create content, that is using your sense of agency and your creativity in that. And then the fourth one, the final one, and we've seen this also, the Achiever, which is around mastery, is where you answering the questions, you're getting feedback, and you're getting better at it, and you're getting feedback loops to show how you're getting better through that. So those are 4 elements where we look at those motivation points. And when we design something, we say, okay, well, typically we have users who will veer towards certain areas, though we've got all of those motivations in us. So quite interesting, like when we work with engineers, they are very much free spirits. They like exploring, they like puzzles, they like challenges. Not so much about, yeah, there's people around me, but hey, when we work with salespeople, they want to achieve and they want to socialize. And then obviously philanthropists, and that is, you'll see, we did a game for WWF, which I'm going to share, is you contributing towards creating awareness in terms of endangered fish in the ocean. So you want to be part of that. So we look at bringing those elements in, and we look at what our user persona, and it's a bit of design thinking that we bring in the actual gamification. So I thought I've given you a whole lot of content theory around it, but I thought, let me share with you sort of 3 examples of where gamification has been used in learning and people attraction. One is from our company, and then 2 others are other very cool examples and very successful examples that have been done internationally. So this we actually designed as an online mobile game for WWF. They obviously look at environmental issues, and we looked at the ocean issue. And our whole awareness with this game was to actually create awareness around that there's a robot system. There's red, orange, green around certain fish in the ocean. And we didn't want to just give people and tell them that. We wanted to get both the kids and the families playing this game to be aware of that I shouldn't go and buy this particular fish, or I shouldn't have this particular type of sushi, because actually it's on the red endangered list. So we actually designed this mobile game, and it really was about creating this awareness. And we launched it off Ocean Day last year. And then we basically had a leaderboard. We also had prizes in the game. And what we found was, I mean, those are just some of the elements of feedback. So you obviously, this is just, you can actually go onto the website and play their game. But you started your game, you had a submarine, you customized your submarine, and then you actually went through different levels in the ocean, and you had to overcome certain obstacles. That was around fish nets, certain things, and we gave you pieces of information, but you also had to capture the endangered fish, and you got some feedback on that. So you went from green, where it was very, very abundant sea life and not many obstacles, to orange, where it got a bit more, less fish, more obstacles, and then into red, where there was like hardly any fish and obstacles around that. So what we found from that very simple game, we had 300,000 people were reached, and this is stats of their website. Average playtime was 3 minutes, which is really not bad in terms of people's attention and time of span. And we had 165 average plays per day of that. So, you know, we're looking at doing some behavioral survey collections to see, has this actually made a change in people's behavior and in terms of their awareness. We certainly got those are the quantitative numbers. What we built in there was purpose. There was social awareness. So people wanted to play the game because they wanted to be part of the environmental movement. There was mastery, where the challenges and the points came in, and they had to move up the levels. And they actually went back to play it again, and they learned more through that process. And then we had autonomy. So in this experience, you're actually navigating through the ocean. So there's some discovery. And then obviously we had a leaderboard, and then top, you know what we say, if you don't publish the whole leaderboard, we say, here's your top people, the top 5. And that was social recognition. A lot of them were actual volunteers in the organization, but we also took it out into schools as well. And they got recognized for that. So we built those elements into the actual gameplay. And yes, I can share the link and you can go and play it online. We're actually doing an upgrade of that version. Then I thought this is really interesting. This is Marriott Hotel. They actually used this game for recruitment and learning about the organization. They put it on their Facebook profile. And the game was designed in the hotel industry. And before someone actually applied, they had to play this game and get a certain level and a certain amount of points. And they had to actually run the hotel. They had to do certain things. And what it did was it created awareness around what's involved in the work. And especially for certain countries that weren't familiar with the hotel industry. And also made people realize, is this something that I want to do before I go actually apply to and put my CV forward? And obviously, if you don't do well in this game, you won't be allowed into the next level. So, you know, it created a funnel, firstly, and it was a fun way of creating a funnel in terms of this. And then it also created awareness in terms of merit, and creating that engagement and building the brand and doing something innovative and different. So, yeah, they had 25,000 players in the first week. And this was actually it was 2012, this was run. But, yeah, it went really well. And you can see they used mastery, challenges, points with feedback loops, how you're doing. They created autonomy, so you moved to different parts of the hotel. There's branching choices depending on what you chose. You got feedback and you got points around that. So actually, when they did, and when you read the case study, they actually found that certain people thought, oh, this is not for me. And there was a natural selection process from that. So I thought that was a really interesting way of using gamification and also learning in that process. Then this was, I thought, I need to take something from IT. This was very successful. This was the SAP Road Warrior. And it was around basically understanding the products and how to service customers. So it was fairly sophisticated. They had different customers. And you basically went out there and they had simulated situations where you had to make certain choices and you got feedback, but you also contributed your learning into the overall system of SAP and you got recognized for that. And they took some actual customer interaction. So that's the whole thing is to make this type of gamification real is to take things that actually happen in the environment and build it into the game. And they had certain challenges and people actually shared certain of their experiences of the game. So it led to increased product knowledge and improved sales performance through playing this. And you can see that's just an example. So here you actually are selling it into a car auction company. You have to deal with a buyer. You have certain challenges that happen and you have to apply yourself in that. So we've got purpose. They were sharing knowledge to the broader sales organization. There was mastery, obviously challenges and points. And people could probably see who were your top performers. And then obviously there was autonomy with the discovery and exploration of different customers. So those are just 3 examples of how this has been used and how it's been put into practice. I don't know if there's any questions or anything that you might have around these particular case studies and examples.
Interesting, really.
So much you can do with it.
Yeah. Something you know in that examples in your organizations. Yeah. Fascinating.
And that's the thing, and that's the message I wanted to get across. As much as this looks, and obviously I've got this framework with technology and with creativity and understanding who your users are, you can really try something and get feedback. I always say minimum viable product. Get it out there, get feedback, and see how that comes back to you. So, and there's a natural inclination that we want to play. As much as I've seen it in many like workshops where people stand. I remember I had a bunch of bankers and they stood at the back and we did the whole, and this was my first game and I was like very nervous about the whole experience. And the interesting thing was those guys ended up being more engaged at the end of the game. And I was very worried about getting them involved in that.
I think it was interesting in the previous presentation as well around the feedback. Because my concern is you invest in training, you know, these specifics, sure, you've got to get certifications and other bits and pieces, but what we're doing at the moment, and I'm just loving today's session because it's very relevant, is we're working through case studies to apply practical knowledge for our teams.
Yes.
But I'm also sitting there thinking, okay, we're going through this process, we've put people in different teams. So we actually, I mean, gamification can be as simple as we're working through these case studies. I'm seeing all of these things happening. I just didn't have anything to label it with.
Yes.
But putting a prize at the end or kind of ranking the teams at the end suddenly puts a different perspective on it where people, you know, so the guy that was sitting here, you know, you can genuinely tell he's disengaged. He's not, maybe that competitive nature in him loops him into the program because the other people are bought in, but there's people that you can clearly see that aren't engaged. Maybe yeah, today's just been very interesting.
And I think this is the other thing I want to say. You don't need to like revamp and do something like this. You can, there's online leaderboards that you can plug into. This is the amazing thing. And what I've seen in the last few years is that there's so many things you can plug in and you can start with something simple. And if you look at those 4 styles, and you bring in an element of each, you will most likely trigger something in someone. I'm not saying you're going to get everyone involved, but you'll definitely increase their engagement on that. So again, something as simple as rewarding people, something as simple as creating friendly competition between teams is very powerful.
You'd be surprised how far a kid can go.
It's about the whole winning.
Yeah. Bragging rights. So we had an example with us as well. We rolled out Salesforce. I know there's a couple of bad connotations that it's, all had to get your 50,000 points and it was actually putting your camera. So they gave us sweatshirts afterwards. One size also doesn't fit. But anyway, I was very disappointed when I finally won. We all sat there for literally 4 months every night working on these things. And then we going to cheat the system because you actually figured out all the easy courses and you got your points so you can actually get your stuff. But I think the one negative thing that we did is when we forced people to do it, they hadn't done it by a certain time. The bonuses were taken. So we actually did the negative thing.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a little bit of a balance. It was a very positive thing in the beginning. You didn't get the full buy-in from people because it took a stack of effort at a time.
Yeah.
And then we went the opposite way around. How are we going to get the points? And the most simplest things I understand, it wasn't really adding value back so much as well. So you've got to balance these things out in the right way.
There's definitely that. I mean, that's a more subtle thing, is where and you've got to read the tone of your audience and your learner. So you don't want to make something like childish or cartoon-like or have too many things going. You need to keep it simple. And that's where I think a testing goes. You take a sample, we always test. We do a sample group and get feedback. And you know, we haven't always got it right, but I think we've definitely seen that it does shift the needle in terms of people wanting to participate. So that's just yeah, hopefully it's given you some ideas. What I have said is there are great books out there if you have the inclination. There are also great courses, Udemy. I know there's also LinkedIn Learning, there's edX, there's websites which I can share. So there's a lot out there. It's just knowing where to find a search around it. And yeah, I think it's something that's going to become more and more integrated into how we learn, and the technology is just driving that in our design.
When you first asked, you know, who's done any gamification, like, I don't think I have, but the more you've been speaking, I mean, I use Waves.
Yes.
I don't know what ninja we have to go to. I had people at work like, oh, what's the voice really? When I drive home, I'll take a different route. And it's stupid, but we do it. I mean, I'm laughing at Rose. She's the absolute gaming queen when it comes to golf. Just do a challenge. She will. Oh, shit, sorry. But yes, and we do that. It's natural, but I thought of it as a game. This is fun, but it's fun.
Yes.
So, I mean, Strava, all the bad.
I mean, I think this is like, I don't close my move ring. I get like, can let me just walk down the passage and back again. I mean, that's how it is. Obviously, there's addictive stuff. And that you want to limit that. And then there's the stuff that's more like internally driven.
Yeah.
We're a learning company and we have our limits. Sometimes we add our limits onto the portal and we ask them to go through an assignment. And then in the week, we'll actually post and say, oh, these are the 3 top key. But you can't believe the next thing. The people are moving. So it's really interesting to see when we talk about that intrinsic motivation. It's just the recognition they want. That's about anything else.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that. Both those two have done flows around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do have a little bit of a pitch, if you will. So we do offer excellence in learning design for anyone who does want to bring gamification into their design. We do it over 4 sessions, and we do a little bit more. Obviously, go into detail. We look at it from a motivation, what's your typical profile, how do you do persona mapping, and then we actually work with you on a particular project. So we take an area that you want to gamify and actually work through it with you, and also give you some feedback on that. We take it through 4 diamonds, and at the end of it, you'll have your course, your program, whatever that may be. We do it online. We've also done it face-to-face. We find people are quite keen to do it online and do your sessions. So we have a self-study piece. We also have examples of it. And then we have sort of a session where you get together and we go through what you're putting and give you feedback on that. So the whole idea behind this, and I know there's a lot of courses out there, but this is actually a practical way of taking something and just hand-holding you through the process and putting something out there. So we run this twice a year, and our next one is in October. And yeah, this is kind of what it looks like. This is when we did it in person. This is us working with one of our clients. They were doing an induction program, an online induction program, and we were busy like working with them on their project with them. And I think for us, it's also, it keeps us, it's nice. I love sharing and I love seeing things come. And the more that people are doing this, I think the more that we're going to elevate the learning experience at the end of the day. So thank you so much for your time. Need to know more, that's our website, and hopefully it's giving you some ideas.
Thank you, Deirdre. Very thorough. I think you summed it up perfectly when everyone realized actually we do gaming. We just don't think of it because we've got this preconception. It must be this format.
Yes.
But I think you all know my son is 5, he's in grade 0, and they have the chore chart, and he got to put stars on the chores, and then he was one of the first to take it back, and he could choose a pass. There was a pop-up, which we have 7 or 10,000 at home, but this was one that teacher gave him. And this is next to his bedside table because he was number 3 to bring his chore chart back. Then she sends a new one home for this holiday, and he's like, "Well, have I done this?" And I said, and I'm like, "Of course, you have to do the chore." But the concept is that it's sweet to recognition and reward, and driving the behaviours that we want. So thank you very much. And the ladies, we left with 3. I saw a whole bunch of messages come in. Ladies online, thank you very much for joining us. We're going to drop you off now. Oh, they were all saying goodbye. It was popping up. But thank you, ladies.
Thanks so much. Enjoy your Women's Day.